In this QGIS tutorial, we're going to learn how to produce a map for a Phase 1 habitat survey using the standard colours of the JNCC Phase 1 habitat survey recommendations. Traditionally, these were done with coloured pencils, but these days you're much more commonly seen them done using software. Here's a typical one I've found online from Applied Ecology Limited. And this is a fairly typical professionally produced map for a Phase 1 survey. They will always have a scale bar, nice, clean, black and white backgrounds normally, and a key down the side that features only the habitats that you've used in the map. Typically they'll have a figure label here and a title and date of survey and their job references and other things down here. But in our case, we're going to produce a map without the figure labels here, and you'll put those under the image in your report as you would for a scientific journal and as we usually do for most of our assignments. So what we're going to need is a map with a scale bar, all the habitats in the official colours for Phase 1 surveys, and a nice key that goes with it. One thing that's missing from this map are target notes. We're going to add target notes in to our map as well. So we'll start with a new project in QGIS, and the first thing we want to do is add a base map. We'll go ahead and use Google Satellite and drag it in, and we'll zoom into our survey area. Now typically when you've done a survey, you'll have been on the ground and identified some habitats. You may have marked some points on a GPS, and you may have used a map and handwritten habitats and points as you go. So we'll be transferring those data onto our map. The first thing we might want to do is outline our survey area. And to do that, we're going to draw a polygon. So the first thing we do is make a new shapefile layer, and we're going to navigate to the folder where we want to work. And I've got a new folder called P1 tutorial files. Your file structure, your folders will be different. So create a folder where you're going to work, and we're going to put our shapefiles in this folder here. Okay, and this particular shapefile layer is going to be the study, actually we'll call it survey area. The geometry type is a polygon, and I always like to have a name field. That's text, and we add that to the fields list. And OK. Once we've done that, we can hit the yellow pencil to edit and the add polygon feature button. And we can draw around our survey area. Right click to finish, and of course that is bringing up the feature attributes, and it wants me to put a name in. Remember that the ID is a almost redundant field that you can't put anything in, but I can put a name in there. I'm going to put survey area. Really, you'll probably put the site name in there. I'm just going to, maybe I should put that actually. I'm not going to name the site, but site name, just so that you know what goes in there. And of course we can't see through that, so we're going to have to do something about that. We just want an outline. If we double click on it, left click, we can bring up the symbology, and there are a number of ways we can do this. So if we go to simple fill, we can make the fill opaque, so the opacity, take that right down, and then we can maybe make the stroke colour red so it shows up very well and a bit thicker, and apply those. And there we have a nice outline. You may have noticed already that I didn't actually need to do that. There's an automatic one there, look, red outline, apply, and that does it for me. That was a little bit thicker by the looks of things. And when you're happy with that, if you click on the yellow pencil again, it'll ask you if you want to save it, and we do. So there's our survey area. Now I want to draw polygons around my habitats that I will have identified on the ground. So we're going to add a new shapefile layer in the same way as we did before. This one is going to go in the same place, but we're going to call it habitats. Again, it's polygon. We might want to put a name field in there, but importantly, we're going to need a place to put the habitat code so that QGIS knows where to look for the habitat and assign the correct colours to it. And that needs to relate to the column that's in the style file, and that happens to be P1 code, so for phase 1 code. It's text data, 80 is long enough, and we can add that in. Okay. Now before we start, we want to apply the styles to that layer so that when we import them, they're the correct color. We can do that afterwards, but this way it's obvious when you put the code in correctly or incorrectly, because immediately the correct color will appear. So we're going to do it first. So what we do is we double left click, and if you remember at the bottom left we have a little menu that says style, and we can load style. And we're going to load from file, so click on the 3 dots, and then you need to look for your files. So you will have put these files, these P1 Habitat Survey Toolkit files, in your folder that you're working in. Those are on Brightspace. So if I whiz over to Brightspace, I can show you where they are. They're in the QGIS tutorial materials. There's a little folder called Phase 1 Habitat Styles for QGIS. You need to download those and put them in the folder that you're working with. Okay, now the one we want to start with is for polygons. So it's this one here. Habitat Survey Toolkit, QGIS, QML, Polygon Styles, or Polygon Style File. So we click on that and load style. And there they are. So you'll recognize these from the list in the JNCC book. I can actually flick to that. If you go to the back, if you flip to Appendix 1, you'll see the survey habitat classification, and it's got all the codes in there and the colours that they relate to. And some examples of maps. If you flip to Appendix 2, you've got the alphanumeric code for each habitat, and this is the format that you need to write it in when you enter the codes. Okay, so if we flip back to QGIS, you'll see the list here. That's the code in the format that you need to enter them in. We can apply that, and okay. Now when we draw a polygon, it's going to ask us for a name. You may not always have a name, but it's going to ask you for the P1 code. And this is a coniferous plantation, which is A1.2.2. And there we go. We've instantly got the correct Phase 1 survey colour for a plantation. And you can go ahead and draw your next habitat. You'll find that by default your cursor will snap to any corners that you've already drawn. Having them snap means that you don't have gaps between your habitats, or you don't have them overlapping. So that's a very useful feature. But if you do need to turn it off, perhaps you want to do a little bit more detail, or leave a gap and it's not allowing you to. If you go to project and snapping options, it'll bring up a menu and you can toggle it on and off using the magnet. But I tend to leave it on for most of the drawing I do. You can, of course, zoom in and out. As you're working to get a bit more accuracy. There we go. Don't leave that one out. And when I'm done, right click, P1 code, we're going to call this broadleaf woodland, A1.1.1, there we go. And we can build up a map like this. We're going to call this one perhaps unimproved grassland. That's semi-improved. So I've made an error there. I've misremembered my codes. I wanted to call that one neutral grassland unimproved, but I've put in the code for semi-improved. So to correct that, I can go into the attributes table, open attributes table, and I can see that that's the error I made. And because I'm still in edit mode, I can edit the text directly. If I wasn't, I would have to hit the yellow pencil there. But I think the correct code is B2.1, and I have to hit the editing pencil to save that, and it should have corrected my error. Okay, I'm going to continue adding some shapes. And I may want to consult my appendix for the codes. I'm calling that scattered scrub, A2.2. And this one perhaps is more continuous scrub, A2.1. There we go. I may also have some linear features in there, but now I can't see where those are, so I'm just going to untick habitat so that those are temporarily invisible, and I'm going to mark perhaps a hedgerow. Let's say we've got a reasonably species-rich hedgerow along this edge. I might want to put that in as a linear feature. There are actually two ways of putting in a hedgerow. You can actually draw around it and put it in as an area, or you can draw it as a linear feature. It kind of depends on the scale you're working at. But for the demonstration, we're going to put it in as a linear feature, and we do that by adding a different shape file layer. We're going to put it in the same place, and these are often referred to as boundaries, so we'll call it boundaries. That's a line geometry type. I'll put my name field in case I need it. And again, P1 code. Pencil for editing, and then the add line feature button is there, and I would just draw that in. Maybe it goes around the corner. And the P1 code for an intact hedge is J2.1.1, I believe. And so that's not the correct color, and that's because I haven't imported the style yet. So if I go to, if I double click it, it'll bring up the symbology, and I can go to style, load style, from file again. Those files should still be in there, and I'm looking for the line style file. Load it in, there they are, and if I apply that now, my boundary should be labelled as recommended by the JNCC handbook, and I can put my habitats back in there. Generally want your boundaries on top of your polygon files. You can play with the order of these as well, see what shows up best. And I do need to remember to untoggle the editing and save those files. I need to do that for habitats as well. And those are done. There's one more feature type that we use in Phase 1 survey maps, and those are target notes, and we enter those as points. So if we toggle the habitats off for now, it could have been that I've got a mature oak tree or two that I want to label in here. So I'll create a new shapefile layer, and these are for target notes. These ones are points. I'll put my name field in. I'll also put a number field in, because sometimes I want these numbered. It could be that I have a particular feature that crops up several times, like a veteran oak tree perhaps, and I want them all labelled number 1 and then have a key that says veteran oak tree. So I may have a number for those and a different number for a different kind of feature. So I'll typically put a field like that in. And the field that will identify that as a target note and give it the correct colours isn't P1 code this time, it's title with an uppercase T. So we'll add that one in. Now if I go to edit and add point feature, I can add in my target notes. Let's say that that is a veteran oak. We might want to put that in there. Might want to give that a number 1. And for title we need to put target note. And then of course I need to add the style file. This time it's the target note style file. And I can see that I need to add a space in my title there, which I have forgotten. So if I open the attribute table, I can add my space in there. And it shows up in the traditional target colours. And if I want to add the labels to that, I can go to labels, single labels, and point the name, and it'll say veteran oak. It's in black there, or if I prefer, I can give it a number. These may show up better in white on Google Images, but we're going to get rid of that satellite image at one point. It'll be on top of the colours, so I tend to leave them black, and instead of changing the colour, I'll put a buffer around that. So draw a text buffer, 1 millimetre is probably fine, in white, and apply that, and that will show up around the edge. Now that's quite a large target note. I can change the size of that if I want to. I can take that down to maybe 4, and depending on the scale of your map and how many you've got, the size you want them will vary. But you see the ones overlapping with that. So what I'm going to do is go back to the labels and look at placement, and I'm going to just go up the distance here. I'll try 1 to start with, and that's probably going to do it. So your numbers are going to be slightly offset, and you have to play with that to see what suits based on the scale you're working on. And it could be that I've got a few more of those. Those are all number 1s. And in title, I always have target note. There's another one. It could be that I've also got some ashes. We'll give those number 2. And again, target note. There we go. And there we have a target note label number 2. And I can put the habitats back in, and we're nearly finished on our map. But typically when you finish a map, you don't want the satellite image in the background. You might want something more basic, perhaps something in black and white, so that your colours show up really well. And we have a number of XYZ tiles that you can bring in. I'm going to remind you how to bring in an XYZ tile. You right-click on XYZ tiles in your browser there. You go to New Connection, and then you put the name of it here and the URL here. Okay. One that I'm going to use is actually called OpenStreetMap Black and White. And there's the URL for that. I'll put that in the description in the YouTube video, and I'm just going to call it OS Grey. And if I bring that into here, you see that the colours for the habitats show up a lot better. And if we go to the example that we looked at before from Applied Ecology, you'll see that they've done something similar. They've got a basic grey map that underlies the Phase 1 survey mapping that they've done over the top. At this point, I've noticed that I've made a bit of an error here. I've been a bit careless drawing my habitats, and I've gone outside the boundary, so I might want to correct that. And the way I do that is I go into the correct layer, I hit the pencil to edit it, and I've got a tool here called the Vertex tool. Now, if I double click in an area, it's going to add me a vertex, and I can snap it to the survey area there. Okay, and that's corrected. And if I click on the arrow again, I can save that. At this stage, I'm fairly happy with my map, but I need to export it with a scale bar and a key. And I'll show you how to do that in the next tutorial.